Well, now to talk about this report in more detail and offer their individual perspectives, three former Met Police officers, former Detective Chief Inspector Simon Harding, former Scotland Yard Detective Peter Bleksley and former Scotland Yard Superintendent Nuris Mehta. Welcome, one and all. Nuris, I'd like to start with you. We have talked about this again and again. I made the point in the introduction, there are thousands of able, committed and hard-working policemen and women, but this is an absolute disgrace. And people watching this and reading that report today, I mean, what's your reaction? This is appalling.
Well, it's absolutely, I'm shocked and devastated. I've served, decades in the Metropolitan Police Service, but what I've seen is just unbelievable. And, the report has really got under the skin of the Metropolitan Police and it's shown us the flaws and the prejudice. And I think, I believe that actually the Commissioner has to acknowledge institutional racism, misogyny and homophobia. You can't move on. You cannot pick and choose what you want from a report that your own data has shown. Baroness Casey has spent a year there analysing that data, and it was the data that was made available to her. She spent years speaking to police officers, and by denying that, you're actually insulting those people that came forward and you're insulting the experience of the communities. You cannot move forward, in my opinion, unless you acknowledge that holistically and then start with what you need to do, which is reforming.
Pete, welcome. You're always welcome on this show. Are you ashamed tonight?
I think a lot of police officers who have served in the Met are very sad because I used to be able to fly around the world in my work and walk down the steps of any aeroplane and be greeted and respected because the Met Scotland Yard was a globally respected and trusted law enforcement body. I don't think it is today. But for me, the real landmark moment of all of this is we hear all these senior officers saying about the thousands of good officers. Well, now is their opportunity to prove that they are the good officers. And they must now, unflinchingly, because they are the vast majority of the officers anyway, the constables and the sergeants, unflinchingly report on any wrongdoing. They can't look the other way. They can't pretend it didn't happen. They just have to confront it, report it, and be the whistleblowers.
Simon, to describe it as a rotten culture wouldn't even be good enough. Did you see it? Did you see it when you were there?
Not to the extent which she's reported on. No, I certainly don't think so. And I think there's certain things that you probably we all have to reflect back on it. We've both been in 30 years, and Peter retired a long time ago when corruption and racism was rife then, and nothing seems to have changed in the reports that we've got. But I think it's the moving forward bit for me now, which is the owning this report. Yeah. The semantics around using the word institutional. I think he's done that to try and protect the rank and file officers from not saying this isn't a personal attack on all of you. You're not all like that. And I think, I've seen the social media today of a number of officers which are breaking ranks and coming out and saying, I'm not like that. My kids have been crying this morning.
But Pete's point is, and I'm not having a go at you three, I'm delighted to have you on, but that's all well and good to say we're going to move forward. Are you telling me with 80 years' experience between the three of you, you never saw this? Are any of you sitting here tonight thinking, I wish I'd dobbed the people in, as you are saying they should do now?
I did. In the late 70s to the early 80s, when I was in uniform, I saw rampant racism. I saw young black men fitted up and beaten up. And do you know what? I was a coward. I didn't report it. Shame on me. And that's why I am asking the frontline officers, whenever they witness this wrongdoing, to please be better police officers than I ever was and be braver human beings and do the right thing. I ask you.
Yeah, that's very honest. And in fact, now there is a culture, it will be easier to come forward, because I suspect in your defence it was almost impossible. We've talked before about, the Met Police mark their own homework. If there's a rotten apple, they have an inquiry in-house. It doesn't work.
Well, when you say that, Jeremy, I have been that whistleblower. I have been victim of racism and misogyny in the police service, and I was of senior rank. And it was hard for me to come forward because everything that's been explained, it doesn't matter what rank you are.
What happened to you? Tell us.
Well, where do I start? It's like a whole story for me. And what I did do was I confronted it, and I actually wrote to the Commissioner and I chaired a gold crisis group to show her that the extent of racism that was being faced by her senior black and Asian officers, and that could permeate to others. And when I actually wrote to the Commissioner and invited her to come to this gold group, She didn't. She sent a representative. So is it easy? No, Jeremy, because there is still not any room for whistleblowers. They're not protected. And when you whistleblow, even now in this environment, what happens is you're vilified, you're ostracised. Operation Hotton, Charing Cross, which was only a few years ago, they actually threatened females on their carrier bus to cut their hair in their uniform. So we're not talking, as you said, 1923. We're talking a few years. This is systemic. There's systemic failure, which Casey has identified. She's also identified fundamental and systemic failures in leadership.
Yeah.
And after Sarah Everard, I would have thought that there would have been actually a real priority in violence against women and girls. The rhetoric has been, but actually, when you look at it, their strategy is hollow. They don't even look at that crime. They haven't prioritised that. Broken fridges with some, samples from rapes, all defrosted. Where is their priority? So I think there is some real fundamental issues.
The whole subject of whistleblowing, I'm going to use nautical analogies now because it's really important. Whistleblowers in the past have been regarded as rocking the boat, generally speaking. Well, this report today is the iceberg that the Met Police has just sailed into. If there are enough hands on deck, in other words, enough frontline troops to tell everybody, the authorities, about the wrongdoing, then there might be enough hands on deck to save this ship.
Cressida Dick, without wanting to make it personal, she got out at the right time, didn't she, Simon Harding?
Well, it would seem so, but this has been going on for many years, even when Sir Mark Rowley was in the Met Police back then. So, I think this guilt by association is what's going to hurt a lot more now. That's what I'm seeing that now, is that people are now considering whether or not they stay. Do they stay in what is a toxic environment for many people, especially
I think a lot of people will be able to looking over their shoulders thinking,
I think
God,
so.
I've been part of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit about, if you are guilt by association, you're trying to stand up for yourself now.
But how brilliant would it be if you stayed in the Met, you reported all the wrongdoing, and in just a couple of short years, you could hold your head up high, walk into any building, any audience and say proudly, I work for the
And now is the time to do that, isn't it? To be perfect. Here's a question for you all. We've talked about the Met repeatedly on this show, and this report is damning in itself. Does that paint a picture across the whole of the United Kingdom? What about other forces?
Yeah, absolutely. This is about the Met, and that's why we're here, because of the Casey review. But the same behaviours have been exhibited, will have been exhibited across all forces. So they can't say it's not us because it's there. They just need to dig deeper. And the thing is that, those good officers that are saying, well, we can't stay, we have to look over our shoulder. They're the silent majority. They're the ones that need to call this out because there's been a lack of professional standards. That ethos has moved away. We need to bring it back, and they need to embrace professional standards and not see it as an enemy. And also, the safe space for whistleblowers, people need to have confidence to say that, and we've spoken about that earlier.
One other thing for all of you before you finish, and this is your favourite subject. It seems to a lot of people that the top brass in the police focus on wokeness and don't actually do the everyday job. You'd agree with that, absolutely, wouldn't you?
Well, these two panel members might be better placed to comment on that than I, but from what I hear and what I see from sources, there is an orthodoxy. And if you want to climb that greasy pole of promotion, you better subscribe to it. And then if you do, you can bring your pals with you.
Simon? Oh!
Yeah, I mean, there's a different way to get promoted now through, I wouldn't say woke necessarily, but...
ticking the boxes.
Yeah, there's a lot like that. I mean, I stopped where I was because I'm not like that, wasn't asked.
So it wasn't really in terms of ability, it's box ticking and networking and
there
all
are
that
a lot
sort
of,
of stuff.
There are a lot of very, very good officers at senior ranks as well, but there is a question over leadership, and I think that point was made earlier. There are people on these WhatsApp groups and all these other things who are supervisors, who are essentially complicit in what is happening. So, those are the people that need to be looked at as well, that kind of mid-range management, which is the supervising those people that seem to be getting in trouble most.
Nusrit, just to finish, can the Met Police, can the British police regain the public's trust? Because it's a dark day.
It is a dark day. They can, but not with the attitude that we've seen from the Commissioner, today. Yeah. They need to embrace it, move forward and really take the bull by the horn. And it comes back to wokeness. Now, I think that's a very dangerous term because, for me, it's a negative term because it actually is going against everything that's progressive and making it... I made my promotion because I worked damn hard, and I was stopped at every rank. Every rank I was stopped, and that's because of the ingrained institutional racism and misogyny. In question, yes, they can, but they have to try hard.
Fascinating, all three of you. Thank you. Next.